Welcome to Straight Up Book Club. Okay, so this is Act 5 of The Fury by Alex Michaelides. So if you haven't listened to our first 4 podcasts, this is a great time to go back and catch up on those. But if you've caught up, if you've read Act 5, let's get into it. Let's talk about all the things we're gonna learn as this book closes out. So before we get into it, Heather, where did you read this book?
I feel like my answer is very boring, but I literally read it the next day, like after we recorded last. And because it was such a short act, I read it all in one sitting. So it was literally like in the morning on this very couch that we're on now with a cup of coffee. So it was, very typical, not that exciting, but I had fun.
Nice.
Morty had fun.
What did you think, Morty? We'll get into that. I think I actually read it the same day too. We were in the flow of conversation. I kind of wanted to follow up on all the things we've been talking about and see if any of our theories held ground.
So
I went home. Yeah, I went home and I finished it all in the same day too. So I love that we did that.
Very quick act, and a lot happened.
Mm-hmm.
Jam-packed. I guess we can get into it and kind of talk about what happened in that act. It was jam-packed, but I feel like it was a lot and not a lot all at the same time. Like, essentially, in the previous act, we know that Elliot's world went dark. And then this act starts with a little bit of him going back in time. You're leaving us already, Morty.
Aww.
He'll be back. Of us going back in time to the moment when Lana arrives at Elliot's because she has caught wind of Kate and Jason having an affair, and she wants to kind of establish a little bit of a plan with Elliot as to what to do about that. And they get wasted drunk, like they kind of both fall asleep in a bit of a drunken haze. And then this is all from Lana's point of view now, which is kind of strange and interesting.
Yeah, it's the first time that's happened, right?
A bit of a POV shift.
Well, what about when she was in London and on her walk? I guess that was kind of in her POV, wasn't it?
Yeah, the very beginning is. So
Yeah.
it kind of bookends. Is that a pun? It's kind of bookended with her POV because we start with it at the very beginning when he starts talking about, obviously we have our prologue, which is Elliot's point of view, but then we have our first chapter, which is Lana, and then the very last act starts with Lana as well. So she kind of wakes up in this drunken, after this like drunken haze. Elliot's still asleep, and she notices that he's asleep on top of a notebook. And she goes and grabs it and she reads through it. And while reading through it, she uncovers this massive charade or play, whatever you want to call it, that he has written, which is essentially him putting a bunch of evidence all throughout Lana's life to hint at Jason and Kate's affair, and then ultimately have them wind up on the island where Kate kills Jason. Yeah. And this just enrages Lana, and she kind of goes into this, I guess, shift where she leaves. She goes to Kate. They have a little bit of a making up, I guess, because she confronts her with the affair. Kate admits that, yes, her and Jason had the affair, but it's over now. Kate wants nothing to do with it. She loves Lana. They make up, and then they concoct their own plan.
Let's talk about that notebook a little bit. It's so interesting. Like, what struck me was it was written in first person. It was written like a play. It had stage directions. He was figuring out how everyone was going to react. And again, not leaving room for them to deviate from his plan of it. That notebook has come up quite a lot over. So it was one of those things where were you thinking we would come back to it in some way? I wasn't quite sure.
Honestly, the moments when the notebook had come up in the story before, they weren't that notable to me. Like, it just kind of felt it was all part of his this kind of manic fury of him writing this play, so I wasn't really thinking too much.
It's a second pun. This is gonna be a funny episode.
I'm either on fire or really tired, I don't know, but I can't even help myself.
I love it.
This fury, he was writing so quickly that I guess I just didn't really think about the fact that his ideas were being put to paper. I guess I didn't make that connection. So I wasn't really thinking about there being this concrete evidence of his plan. What a thing to wake up to, though, because a part of me is like, if that happened to me, and this is someone who I like loved and trusted, which they do articulate in the story that Lana was so upset because it was someone that she loved and trusted. Would you not think that, like, oh, they're a writer, maybe they're just writing, maybe it's fiction, but I don't know, maybe not, maybe it's like too specific. It's also drawing on really painful things in Lana's reality. So.
And it was also a really great moment, great quote unquote moment, for her to find it, because right, like she had just had this epiphany. She's finally realizing that, oh, she actually loves Elliot, and he's been the one person who's been around and hasn't betrayed her and all of these things. So now when she's sort of leaning into that love and exploring what it might be like as a romantic connection, that's when she finds it. So it was a really great placement in the story, I found. What do you think?
No, you're absolutely right. It's a moment when she has almost like fully decided to trust Elliot by like kind of giving over to her, I guess, emotions for him. And then that was the moment when she discovers that he betrayed her trust. And I'm kind of taking back what I said before about thinking that it could just be fiction, because it discusses really specific pieces that Lana has just experienced, like the earring.
Oh, yeah.
And she discovers that that was actually planted. So she is already shown that he's been lying to her. Like,
yeah.
Oh, that's so bone chilling to think that someone could do something like that to their friend. Yeah. Wild.
Yeah. Can I jump forward a little bit? Because this like just created a connection in my mind. At the very end, we find out that Elliot isn't even an author. He never wrote the play that gained him all this fame, right? He stole Barbara's work. And it's really interesting because now he has this notebook, arguably that's his only act of creation. And it's not even really an act of creation. It's more just an act of manipulation. He's really just a con man.
He's like, I just started watching Ripley.
Oh, I haven't yet. I'm curious about it.
Is it Andrew Scott? Is that his name? The sexy priest from Fleabag.
Oh.
I started watching it last night. But sorry, this is going somewhere. It actually kind of reminds me of his character a little bit. Someone who's just like really craves to be a part of this sort of society of, you know, not just like rich people, but they're all artists in a way. It's a group of actors and writers. Like Barbara West was this prolific writer. Lana is this amazing actor. He wants to be a part of this crowd, and he's finding a way to insert himself as much as possible, even if it means ripping all of these people off. Yeah. And you're right. The only thing that he has created is really just this strange manipulation of all the people in his life. He's very much a con man and very much I'd say like a narcissist, probably a little bit of like psychopathy there. There's a lot of things happening there with Elliot for sure. Yeah,
it's so interesting because he talks about himself as a writer director, and then he talks about how he's breaking his own rules about not anticipating other ways of people to act and motives and all of that. It's because he's not an author at all. He's not a director at all. He's playing this role. He's playing it poorly.
That's so true. And I'm now remembering all the moments leading up to this part where he's drawing on these professionals who are, how do I articulate this? Like these people who are giving this knowledge that are supposed to help him fuel his work. Like he'll quote, I want to say Eugene Levy, and that's not right. Valentine Levy?
Valentine Levy. That was great.
He quotes like Valentine Levy. He quotes philosophers. Like he's always kind
Tennessee
of
Williams,
Tennessee Williams as these figures who are supposedly helping fuel his craft and his art, and all of it's fake.
Yeah,
all of it's fake.
Yeah,
so wild. And then it all adds up to him killing Lana.
Ooh, yeah.
Can we talk about that for a little bit? Because that was a little messy for me. And I also feel like I might be remembering it wrong. Again, like we read this in one sitting like a week ago. So I'm like, we've obviously been reading since then. Because I feel like we both read every day. But it goes from Lana finding all this out. She gets Kate. They decide that they're going to bring Elliot to the island, not to kill him because they're not psychopaths, just to humiliate him a little bit.
Yeah.
And so this whole charade happens that we had seen earlier, where Jason does beat him up, but I think that's Jason's own motive there. And they mock him, and then he's kind of left alone on the jetty. Everybody else goes back up to the house.
Yeah, he's not dead. Remember,
not dead.
last act ended. We weren't sure if he was dead, and he's not.
They didn't kill him. Were they blanks?
They were blanks, yeah.
Okay, so they shot blanks just to kind of scare him, and I think he kind of gave himself enough of a panic to probably pass out. I feel like that's pretty expected thing to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And when he comes to, they've all kind of gone back to the house, and he goes there to confront him. And in their eyes, because they're not manipulative people, this is like, I think, a moment where they're like, let's play him at his game. Mm-hmm. They've kind of moved on from it. They're like, get off the island. You're not welcome here. But they're moving on with their lives. I think it's like Agatha's making drinks or something, and they're all kind of going back to their old lives. And he comes to them, and he's so humiliated. And does he just in a moment of rage kill her, or does something happen to provoke that?
Well, my reading of it was before he even makes it back into the house, he has this moment where he says the wind takes over him. The fury is now inside him. And to me, he was almost passing blame onto this external force in a way. And so I took that as the moment of the trigger moment for him. I mean, he's already in this heightened state. He's panicked, and he knows that he's probably lost Lana completely. There's no going back there. So I think there's that part, and then there's the wind. And to me, those were the instigators of, him shooting her.
Which makes me realize that I think you were right the whole time, because I think your original theory was that there was some external figure on the island, or some sort of presence on the island, that was going to result in the killing.
Oh, did I say that? I don't even remember saying that.
I'm pretty sure. And in a way, like, sure, it was Elliot who kills her, but he is kind of blaming the fury, the wind, this presence that inhabits him, I guess, and that's what brings him to kill her.
Well, it's interesting because is it an external presence? Because to me, it's Elliot. He just is, in the same way as he talks about his child self, his like childhood version of himself is like in the third person as an experience he wants to remove himself from. That's sort of how I took it. So I think it's still him. Did you think then that it's more sort of the fury that's provoking his actions?
No, I think it is him. I think he is casting blame on the fury, on this presence. So I think it's all in his head.
Yeah.
But yeah, he thinks it's the fury. So in a way, you're right.
I'll take it.
I'm trying to tell you that you had it nailed from the beginning. But it wasn't Leo. We all figured out. So that was a was a theory we had at the beginning that we were both wrong about, and I'm glad that we didn't have it solved from that moment. Yeah,
that would have been kind of a bummer to have just been like, all right, like this is what's happening.
And we were right the whole time. Nobody wants to be right. You want, like, there is that slight amount of validation when you have something figured out at the beginning. Mm-hmm. But the validation isn't enough. You want to be surprised. So
yeah, no, absolutely. There's also there's this moment where after or before this sort of moment happens where Lana gets shot, there's this moment where we get a glimpse into Lana's like hopes for her future and how she sees her life coming back together. What did you think of that? That little because now finally we're seeing the soft side of Lana again, right? We've only seen her in this defensive sort of offensive side even, she's retaliating against Jason and Elliot, but right now she's telling us her plans, or we're getting to know her plans about, she's going to go back to LA, she's going to get back into acting. She's sort of figured out what she wants her life to be, and maybe she was in a bit of a lull before that, and then she doesn't get to have it anymore. What was your take on that whole section?
I mean, I think it's like the ultimate tragedy is this person who, and we talked about this earlier, how everybody wants to be Lana except for Lana. It was really clear that she wasn't happy with her life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of it was, unfortunately, her kind of being locked into her relationship with Jason. And then she had that moment where she thought that Jason wasn't going to be a part of her life anymore because of the affair with Kate. And then she had convinced herself that she'd be okay because she'd be with Elliot.
Yeah.
And I think she'd always kind of had these cushions, I guess, of like, well, if I don't do this, I'll do that. But it always seemed to revolve around men.
Yeah.
I don't really know what that means beyond like what I've just observed. But then once all that was taken away, Jason's not really an option anymore. Neither's Elliot. She kind of realized that what she almost like started to realize what she really wanted, which was to go back into acting. And maybe she was being what's the word I'm looking for, limited, I guess, by Jason, by being a mother. She even mentioned that like Agatha, she kind of used her as a crutch. Those weren't the exact words that she used in the book, but it was kind of along those lines. So I don't know, I think she probably, all of her other options were gone. And sometimes when your options are gone, and by options I mean more like safety nets, that's when you kind of realize what you're supposed to do. And so I think she had that realization then, which makes it all the more tragic. Yeah. Really, because she's finally on the up and up. She's finally figuring out what she wants to do with her life. And she's getting Leo ready for his life and the way that she's going to like support him emotionally and financially in his acting. And then that's all taken away from her in a very like real sense. What about you?
Yeah, that's a great analysis of it. You're right. She's always been in the limelight, but yeah, I love how you're sort of framing that. She's still been under the shadows of these men in her life. Leo, Elliot, Jason, Otto, even, that's been like the pattern in her life. So yeah, there's that. And also I think maybe the author wants that final moment of connection with her, right? For us as readers, before we have this tragic moments, that it has a heightened impact. So I think that's a great plot device too in that way.
Absolutely. Everything looks better before it gets worse. So sad. Do you feel that way? Sorry, this is a little bit of a tangent. Do you feel that way when you're like reading a book or watching a movie, or even in your own life? You're just like, it's been going too good for too long.
Yes. Yeah. You know, when you have those movies where there's like a montage of just like all the things happening well, and you're like, this would be so boring. Something needs to happen too, because otherwise you're just like, I don't know, what's interesting. Something needs to go wrong. Yeah, that's why the two main characters can never be together.
No, they can't. I guess there is a world for that kind of literature. I doubt we'll cover it, but if that's your cup of tea, that's great. Probably not the podcast for you.
That's so funny. I don't know why this just reminded me of that, but apparently a lot of like book talk books are just like really spicy. And I was just like
sexy spicy?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Oh, really?
And someone's like, wow, this is just like smut.
I love that. Like, I'm here for the smut. I'm not here for the like, and then they held hands and lived happily ever after. Yeah, in real life, true. Great. I hope everybody has a life like that. In books, I want it to be dark and sad and gut-wrenching. Yeah, no, I feel like with smut.
With a little bit of smut.
A little bit of smut. Love a little bit of smut.
About closer to the end for you. So we find out that Mariana, who is Elliot's therapist, her old therapist, has been in contact with him again, right? And she has this moment where she's talking about her colleague, who's also an inmate, and she says to person to talk to. So look him up, sort of thing. And Elliot assumes that this person isn't in prison because they're also a therapist, but apparently they are in prison. So I'm just like very confused. Like, why was this character introduced solely as a way of, this is the person who's being told this story the entire time,
I think that was nothing, and I could be wrong. I think that was nothing more than a little Easter egg and a little nod to the silent patient.
Oh,
Because
okay.
in the silent, did you read the silent patient?
I didn't.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Tell me without spoilers.
without spoilers, there's a central character who is in a similar circumstance where they're like locked up. I'm not sure, is it jail or is it like more of like
Not sure.
a psychiatric ward in a prison, something along those lines. But one of the main characters in The Silent Patient is Theo.
Okay.
So I think it's a little nod that this is like the same universe, kind of like in Marvel movies.
Okay.
When you'll see, I don't know, one character off to the side, or they'll make like little references. I don't know why I'm quoting Marvel. I hate all those movies. Sorry, this is my spicy take. I can't quote any of them, so why am I using that as an example? Black Mirror is probably a better example. In Black Mirror, like there'll be an episode where they're watching TV and they'll see like a competition from a previous episode on it. Like I think it's using that same kind of tactic just to remind us that like I've written other books, and if you haven't read them yet, they're out there, but also like little fun Easter eggs for the people who are fans. That's how I interpreted it, like a little like
That's interesting. Okay.
tip of the hat to you kind of thing. If it's more than that, if he's like, is he opening the doors for like fan fiction where these two characters come together and create a new novel? Is he opening the door for another book that involves both worlds? That's all, like those are all possibilities, but I kind of just saw it as a little Easter egg for fans of The Silent Patient.
Interesting. Alex, tell us.
Tell us what you're doing. Tell us your plans. What are you writing? What are you doing next? You're obviously listening to this. Tell us. I really want to know what you felt of the ending. Like, were you satisfied with it? Were you frustrated? Like, what was your central feeling when you find out that Lana is dead all of this time and it's actually Elliot who's killed her, and it's after this like weird little charade that they had together where they're really just both manipulating each other?
I feel I was satisfied by it. In a way, it makes sense that he acted like that. I was a little, I don't know that I loved the moment with the Fury, taking over him. It felt it came out of nowhere at that point. I mean, obviously we've had references to it throughout, but I just mean in that moment, what is the reason for that to happen? If anything, Lana should be overtaken by the Fury, right? Because she's more reason to. Elliot is kind of just getting what came to him. So there's that moment. But again, these are sort of nits that I'm picking at because we're doing such a close reading. If I had read this over, a few weeks or so and just read it loosely on the beach, or I don't know, I would have been pretty satisfied. I think I wouldn't have picked at these little moments, but overall I'm pretty happy with it. I think I was very entertained throughout. What did you think of it?
No, I feel the same way. I love how the phrase you just used, nits I'm picking at, because I've never heard that phrase, but it makes so much sense because it's nitpicking. The nits that I'm going to start saying that all the time.
I don't even know if that's a phrase. Like,
we're making it one.
Shit, really weird.
I feel the same way. Maybe it's a writer thing. You can make things up.
Yeah, we get words and we're like, why are these constructed?
Picking at nits.
Really?
The question, was I satisfied? Yeah, you know what? I do think, because I think this is the kind of book that I would typically read a lot faster than the 4 weeks that we've gone through it. So I agree. I think I'm probably picking at it more than I probably should. It's probably meant more for like, you know, you're going to Tulum and you're gonna have a couple Michaelides and you're gonna read this in a few sittings. So I'm probably being a little bit pickier than I typically would. Overall, I think the moment when he killed Lana, I was a little I don't want to say disappointed. It was all really well written and a great book. I think I would just felt like, I don't even know what word to use, a little anticlimactic. But then I was pleased in the epilogue when he is, you know, in the, let's say that it's a psychiatric ward at a prison. Let's just say that. And if I'm wrong, I apologize. When the therapist comes and they kind of go, they're doing that little bit of like closing by return, because he starts out talking a lot about therapy, but then doesn't really mention it again. Therapist comes and then they do that little nod to the silent patient, and I was like, that's really cool. That's fun. I love that. I love the kind of speaking to the fans of Alex Michaelides. I thought that was really cool. So overall, I was definitely pleased in the end. Moments of like, are you kidding me? But no, I liked it.
Nice. You gotta say it straight up.
Yeah, straight up. Our picking of the nits.
It sounds really gross.
It does.
It sounds like lice.
Took the words right out of my mouth. Aren't they called nits? Or
Yeah,
nits?
I think they are nits. You do pick them out.
Is that where the term comes from?
I have no idea.
Stay tuned for the etymology of the word nitpicking. We will let you know. Oh my god. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we tell our listeners what we're reading next?
Well, yeah, just, you know, overall, would you recommend this book?
Yeah, I would. I would recommend it. I think setting wise, I would say read it on a beach. You know, read it on a plane, on a train, in transit. Vacation book.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did notice it's in like all of the airports when I was in Florida a few weeks ago. Like, I didn't fly direct, so I was in Medellin Airport, unfortunately.
No. Yeah.
And it was in every airport. And there's usually only like maybe 10 books, so it's definitely a good like travel
It's
read.
definitely topping all the charts. I think it's like number 3 in the New York Times bestsellers.
Good
LA.
job, Alex.
Yeah, LA Times too, pretty high up there.
That's
so
awesome.
yeah.
Good for him.
I would recommend it too, and I think, you know, if you like books like Gillian Flynn's, what are some other authors? That's the one that comes to mind to me right now. That's sort of like
a Lisa Jewell maybe kind of vibe. There's a debut author. Her name's Ashley Tate, and she's actually writing partners with Ashley Audren, who we've covered with our episode on the Push.
We love Ashley Audren. So
love
good.
Her.
Yeah.
She just wrote a book. Ashley Tate just wrote a book called 27 Minutes. Again, it's a great like page turner. Definitely recommend for, you know, a beach in transit, trains, planes, automobiles if you don't get car sick. Listen to the audiobook if you do.
Yeah, I cannot read on trains at all.
Trains?
Not on trains, not on cars. I get so car sick. Not even on the TTC, like transit. Yeah, I get really sick. Yeah.
Cannot do it in a car. No way. Subway, I'm good, but I have to be facing in the direction of the way the train's going or on the side. If I'm facing backwards, I'm like, it's not happening for me. But
yeah, Audible. Go with that if
Audible
motion sickness.
Automobiles or Libra FM, I think is the other one.
Nice.
Whatever your poison is.
All right. What are we reading next, Heather?
I'm so excited for what we're reading next, and I say that like I feel like I don't have the words. We are going to be reading A Little Life by I hope I pronounce her name right, Hanya Yanagihara. We'll look up the pronunciation for the next episode just to make sure. We've seen it all over Book Talk. When I went to go pick it up at the bookstore the other day, there was a full like ceiling to floor shelf of copies of this book.
Oh,
so
wow.
I think it's very popular right now. It was written in like 2015, so I think it's kind of 2015. I don't know what I just said.
You said 2015.
I need another coffee. But I think it's having a bit of a moment, and I'm really excited.
Yeah, I'm so excited. It is a longer one. I think it's about 700 pages and 5 acts. No, it's longer than that. 7 acts. Something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah, so we're going to read Act 1 and 2 for the next episode. So read up and get caught up. That in itself is about like 200 pages. So take your time. But
yes, take your time.
It'll be worth it.
We will still be here every week with a new episode. We're still going to break it up into 4s, but we'll let you know every week how we're breaking it up. So acts or parts, whatever you call it, 1 and 2 for next time. Know in advance that this book does deal with
pretty sensitive subject matter. Yeah, self-harm, suicidal ideation.
That's like child abuse as well. Yeah. So if those are triggering, skip this book for now. Read Big Swiss. Actually that, nope, don't read that. Read a rom-com. A lot of smut. I think of books that don't have dark themes.
My God. We read a lot of dark shit. Well, thanks for reading with us, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks, everyone. See you at Book Club.
Bye.
Bye.